Welcome to a tutorial video on learning Python. In this video, I'm going to talk about loops. In programming terminology, a loop allows us to repeat some section of code. This can be incredibly useful for examining the contents of data structures, or just doing something over and over again until something else occurs. So let's look at some examples here. Python supports two different keywords when using loops, while and for. Let's start with while. So we see here on line 2, a variable with the value 1. Then on lines 4 through 6, we see a while loop. A while loop starts with the keyword while. We see after the while keyword some type of conditional. You may remember from the previous video on conditional statements, this allows us to compare values. In this case, we're seeing if the value of the variable condition is less than 10. If it is, just like conditional statements, we're going to run some code. So, like conditional statements, like functions, like objects, we see here colon and then white space under that to define what's part of this collection of code. So we see while condition cont is less than 10, we're going to keep doing something. This allows us to loop or repeat. So we see while this is true, while the value, whatever value is within condition is less than 10, we're going to keep looping, repeating until it's no longer true. Once it's no longer true, we stop. So think of it in a way as sort of like a conditional statement. That is, we're testing some values, but then we just keep testing them over and over until they are no longer true. So we see we're printing the value of cont, and then we're adding 1 to it each time. So it's starting at 1 until it is no longer less than 10. So I'm going to run this so we can see this. So we see at the top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then when it was 10, 10 is no longer less than 10. 10 is equal to 10. So it stopped. So we see here we can use this while loop structure to move a certain number of times around in a loop. And each time we were making sure we were adding values to this so we didn't get stuck into it. A stuck loop, sometimes called an infinite loop, is a problem that occurs in programming when there's no way to get out of a looping structure. We want to avoid that, because otherwise no other code will be run. So we see here, we started with 1, we kept looping until we got up to 1, or up to 10, and then it stopped, because 10 was no longer less than 10. So the other keyword I mentioned that's part of Python looping is the for keyword. So loops within Python using the for keyword use a pattern of for in. That is the keyword for and the keyword in. For in. So we're going to start here with defining a list. We see this on line 8. A list contains, in this case, 3 values: hello, welcome, and greeting, each strings. Down here on line 10, we see the for keyword creating a for loop. We see for keyword item in list demo. What this means is for each thing in this data structure, in this case a list, it will be equal to item. So for item in list. Or think of it as for each thing in this list, assign it to this value, which is kind of a long way of writing that. So we say for item in list demo. Again, notice the colon, just like functions and objects, conditional statements, using that colon. In this case, we're going to print item. So for each item in this list, set it to item each time through here until you can no longer do it, and then we're going to print item. And in fact, we saw that when I ran this. With this hello, welcome, and greeting. So we can use for in to move through a list. So for each item in a list, set it to item, and then we can do something with that item In this case, just print it. So for in. If we wanted to run a number of times, that is, repeat a number of times like we did with the earlier while loop, we can do that with a for loop. But we have to use a function called range. So we see down here, range function. For in, again, that same pattern, for in using a for loop. So for I in range 10 up to 10, which is the same structure as this. For I in range 10, keep printing these values. So we know range starts with 0 up to 10 maximum. And in fact, if I highlight this, it tells us this. Returns an object that produces a sequence of integers from start to stop, which is helpful in what I just said. So when we just display one value, it starts at 0 up to 10, so that's a range. So for I in 0 to 10, we're going to move through those. Notice it said an object. So an object, like a list, we can move through in the same manner. For in. So from I, an object containing 0 to 10. And in fact, we see that down here when it printed. It ran this until it was no longer true and then stopped. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 until 10 exclusive and stopped. So let's review all of this. If we want to do a looping or repeating structure in Python, there are two different keywords we can use, while and for. Using the while keyword, we can set up some type of conditional statement we want to test, and then it will keep repeating until that was no longer true. So while this is true, keep on repeating until it's not, and we stop. Using the for keyword, we use the for in pattern. On lines 10 and 11, we saw this, we can move through a list. For item in list, and then each time we can look at that item, look at that entry in the list. We can also use that if we wanted to move a certain number of times, using the for keyword, using the range function. For I in range 0 to 10, move through this a certain number of times. So we can either do range or while to do a fixed number of repeating patterns. And it's left up to the programmer to decide which one they like best and how best to design their project to reflect what they want to do. Maybe the while with a conditional statement is better, or maybe the for with range would work better too. These are all left up to programmer decisions on how best they work with the code and what readability issues might work into what they're doing as well. But as a review, if we're looping in Python, we're using while or we're using for, and each of them allows a slightly different way of looking at looping and repeating structures in Python. Thanks for watching.